Dubai currently has about 3.5 million people, but perhaps only around 400,000 of them truly possess freedom in the fullest sense. Let that number sink in for a moment. Every night, while tourists sip champagne at rooftop bars, while influencers are busy filming under the sunset from the top of the Burj Khalifa, just less than 7 miles away, inside windowless concrete blocks with 4 broken fans, there are 12 men lying on paper-thin mattresses in heat reaching 111 degrees Fahrenheit. They bury their faces in their phones, quietly crying in silence, perhaps too ashamed to let others around them hear. These men did not come to Dubai to fail. They came because someone back home painted Dubai as a dream. They believed in it so deeply that their families sold off land, borrowed money from everywhere, and sent them onto planes with hope carefully packed into every piece of luggage. They are the ones who built every tower you photograph. They clean every hotel bed you lie on. They pour every meter of road you drive across. Today, we will look at a Dubai that Dubai never wants you to see. And once you've seen it, you may never be able to look at this city the same way again. A city with a population of over 3.7 million in the 2024-2025 period has only about 11% native citizens. The remaining massive 89% are essentially temporary guests. This turns Dubai into something more like a giant hotel than a true nation. If you walk outside and feel the absence of families strolling in parks or the laughter of children, your instinct is probably right. About 70% of the population here is male. A society overwhelmingly dominated by men often resembles mining camps more than a civilized urban environment. Men from India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh come here not to build homes, but to serve as gears in a machine that keeps infrastructure running nonstop. Perhaps people have unintentionally forgotten that a sustainable society requires a natural family structure, not streams of solitary individuals. Dubai has carefully constructed a layered system that may remind seasoned observers of older eras, even though it is covered in glass and steel. At the top, we see professionals from the United States or the United Kingdom. They live in high-end apartments, earn tax-free salaries, enjoy top-tier health insurance, and receive free round-trip flights home. They have the right to be heard and protected. In complete contrast are more than 2 million blue-collar workers. Data shows that over 60% of them earn less than $1,360 per month, a figure that is not even sufficient to qualify for opening an official bank account in the United Arab Emirates. They are pushed to the margins of the financial system, living in isolated labor zones such as Sonapur. They appear on worn-out buses at dawn and vanish from tourist sight as neon lights begin to glow. People can spend millions of dollars to buy a Rolex at Dubai Mall, but does anyone stop to ask about the person who laid each tile beneath their feet? A penthouse in Dubai Marina can sometimes rent for a week at the equivalent of a construction worker's total income over 2 entire years. A brutally calculated economic equation, isn't it? Even the healthcare system, though advertised as modern, has invisible barriers of language and cost that make it difficult for those at the bottom to access. Dubai's media is very good at telling stories about the Dubai dream, but in those stories, there is no place for the faces of masons or sanitation workers. They are turned into faceless, nameless mechanical components, existing only to serve perfect check-in photos on social media. Perhaps the glamour the world praises is not truly the result of shared prosperity, but rather an extreme optimization of costs. When there is no minimum wage and strikes are considered illegal, maintaining the gap between rich and poor becomes easier than ever. Organizations like Human Rights Watch have repeatedly alluded to these key mechanisms. Could it be that this miracle is actually built on the exploitation of the patience of 89% of its temporary population? When you sit in a 5-star hotel lobby, sipping a cup of coffee and looking out at the skyline, perhaps the question is not, how rich is Dubai? But rather, who had to pay the price for this wealth to exist? If you are used to the free labor market in the United States, where you can submit your resignation at companies like Ford or General Electric at any time to pursue a better opportunity, then kafala may seem unbelievable. In theory, it is a sponsorship system, but in reality, it is a transfer of control over a person from the state into the hands of individuals or private organizations. In Dubai, a migrant worker's right to reside is not independently guaranteed by national law. Instead, it is tied directly to the kafil, the visa sponsor. This unintentionally creates absolute dependence for survival. If you leave your job without your employer's approval, the law in the United Arab Emirates calls it absconding. And instead of a civil court mediation, the worker may face criminal charges or immediate deportation. It seems that a labor contract has been cleverly turned into a legal rope. Can you believe that even when a contract has expired, a construction worker from Nepal or Bangladesh still cannot switch to another company without a so-called NOC, no objection certificate, from the former employer? That thin piece of paper is, in reality, a tool of ultimate power. It allows employers to control a person's future. Some reports suggest that the NOC is sometimes used as leverage for extortion or to force workers to remain under harsher conditions than originally promised. Even though the UAE announced relaxations to these rules in 2021-2022 for manual laborers, leaving the country can still require an employer's signature to retrieve their passport. An almost absurd imbalance. Employers can cancel visas at any time, but workers have no right to terminate the sponsorship without permission. Imagine if your company owed you wages for 6 to 10 months. A situation not uncommon on construction sites here. Would you dare to report it when your employer holds both your passport and your legal right to remain in the country? The fear of deportation and losing everything, including massive recruitment debts back home, becomes an invisible yet highly effective chain. These men are often isolated in remote labor camps, transported on packed buses, completely separated from the outside world and legal aid organizations. A perfectly staged scenario to maintain silence. In poor rural areas of South Asia, Dubai is not just a city, it is hope, but that hope comes at a steep price. To secure a job in the Gulf, workers often have to pay between $1,000 and $3,000 to labor brokers. For families earning only a few dollars a day, this amount is equivalent to an entire fortune. Instead of investing in stable stocks like Coca-Cola or putting money into savings, these families are forced into extreme measures. Mortgaging their last piece of farmland, selling livestock their only source of livelihood or worse, taking high-interest loans from local loan sharks. They do not go to Dubai to get rich like acquiring companies on Wall Street. They go carrying enormous pressure. They must succeed or lose their homes. Perhaps this no-failure mindset makes them perfect targets for a sophisticated system of exploitation. You sign a contract back home promising a salary of around $400, $500 per month, enough to repay debt and send a little money to your elderly mother. But the moment you land in Dubai, under the scorching desert heat, a new contract appears. This contract is often written in a language they do not fully understand, and the salary? It may have evaporated by 40% to 50%. What would you do? Go back? Don't forget that your passport may already be sitting in your employer's drawer. More importantly, you are carrying a debt equal to 2 years of your actual earnings. Returning immediately is not just personal failure, it is an economic death sentence for your family back home. It seems everything has been carefully calculated so that your only option is to accept and remain silent. We often think of chains as made of iron, but in Dubai, chains are sometimes made of numbers in a debt ledger. The concept of debt bondage may sound distant, but it is daily reality here. With actual take-home pay after living expenses of only about $200, a worker may need at least 18 to 24 months of continuous labor just to repay the principal of the initial recruitment fee. That means for the first 2 years they are effectively working for free. Debt turns any intention of resistance into an act of self-destruction. A complaint about working conditions or an attempt to escape can lead to deportation. And if deported before the debt is repaid, the family's land will be seized, the house will be lost, and the cycle of poverty will consume everything. Perhaps this is the most effective barrier ever built. No guards, no barbed wire, just a debt large enough to keep people trapped in 120-degree heat. As early as 2002, the United Arab Emirates issued a circular affirming that holding workers' passports is illegal. Yet that document often serves more to polish diplomatic reports than to change reality. In practice, the moment these workers land at the airport, instead of being welcomed by freedom, they are typically asked to sign a voluntary passport retention agreement. Imagine you have just landed after a long flight, unfamiliar with the local language, and someone hands you a paper promising to safely store your passport in the company's secure vault for processing purposes. Who wouldn't want their most important asset kept carefully in a sturdy safe like one from Liberty Safe? But perhaps that safe is not meant to protect you, but to imprison your basic rights. The silence of labor inspectors toward this practice has effectively turned an illegal act into a default operating standard in the construction industry. When your passport is in your employer's hands, you become a ghost in the very city you are building. In the United States, If you are dissatisfied with your job, you can drive your Chevrolet anywhere you want. But in Dubai, not having your passport means you cannot buy a plane ticket, cannot register for a SIM card to call home, and cannot even open a bank account. The harshest consequence may be the inversion of justice. If a worker can no longer endure exploitation and decides to escape, they are immediately labeled an illegal resident. Instead of being protected by law as a victim, they suddenly become a criminal in the eyes of local police. It seems the system is designed so that if you choose freedom, you must accept becoming a hunted person. Have you ever been in a situation where a creditor uses your most valuable possession to force you into unimaginable actions? In Dubai, the passport is that weapon. In labor disputes, the return of a passport is often used as leverage to force workers to give up months of unpaid wages. According to multiple sources, more than 90% of low-income workers here do not retain their own passports. Not holding personal identification creates a constant state of anxiety, a form of psychological coercion that makes a person feel less like an independent individual and more like an asset code under company control. Even if they manage to escape to an embassy, the process of reissuing travel documents is often so long and complex that many collapse before finding a way out. It may be hard to believe that in a city where people put gold on pastries, there exist isolated areas like Sonapur. Here, the men who build million-dollar towers are crammed 12 to 16 into a single small room. Picture this: rows of metal bunk beds, thin and worn mattresses, where privacy is a completely foreign concept. The deterioration does not stop there. In what we consider a developed society, it is difficult to imagine hundreds of people sharing a dilapidated sanitation facility. And in the scorching heat, many rooms have only broken fans or outdated air conditioning systems that do little more than circulate hot air. Do you think a poor diet, lacking proper hygienic kitchens, is the fuel that allows these men to operate massive construction sites every day? You may already know that summer in the Gulf is unlike anything you have experienced in Arizona or Florida. When temperatures reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit, steel frames on construction sites radiate heat like ovens. Yet under the pressure of golden contracts and mega projects, these workers continue pouring concrete and carrying steel without rest. Although authorities have introduced the midday break rule to improve human rights optics, reality still appears full of loopholes. How many workers must still operate in enclosed, windless spaces or prepare sites just before the break ends under the blazing sun? It seems that construction timelines matter far more to contractors than the limits of the human body. The impact of extreme heat on the body is undeniable. Medical experts have repeatedly warned about acute kidney failure and cardiovascular conditions caused by heat stress. A troubling reality is that many young, healthy workers suddenly die from sudden cardiac arrest. But you may notice something strange in official medical reports. Most of these deaths are recorded as natural causes. Could this be a convenient way for companies to avoid burdensome investigations into workplace safety and costly compensation claims? While tourists relax in temperature-controlled pools at luxury resorts, those who create that luxury are paying with their lives in absolute silence. Keeping workers confined in isolated camps far from city centers is not merely a housing solution. It may also serve to separate them from the minimum living standards of modern society. When cut off from the outside world, they become anonymous entities, existing only to meet production quotas. It seems that Dubai's luxury is built on a business model where corporate irresponsibility is shielded by a perfectly constructed system of concealment. It is worth reflecting, isn't it, that we call this a desert miracle while overlooking the exhausted shadows beneath those towers. And perhaps it is time to ask what the true cost of those glamorous check-in photos really is. Thousands of healthy young men from South Asia, who had just passed strict medical exams to obtain visas, suddenly die after only a short time working. But do you know what is even more strange? Most of their death certificates are stamped with the same phrases, cardiac arrest or natural causes. In their 20s or 30s, when the body is at its peak, large numbers of men collapsing from natural causes is an insult to anyone's intelligence. Yet in Dubai, it is not common practice to conduct independent autopsies for this class of workers. When the real cause is buried along with the body, the towers continue to rise shining and flawless. You likely understand that when temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the human heart and kidneys must function like an overloaded engine without a cooling system. According to reports from reputable outlets, heat stress is not only an immediate risk, but also a silent threat that erodes workers' internal organs day by day. But why does the term heat stress rarely appear on official documents? The answer likely lies in contractors' pockets. If a death is acknowledged as heat-related, companies would face strict investigations and massive insurance compensation. Instead, labeling it as cardiac arrest, a vague way of saying the heart simply stopped beating, is an excellent economic solution. The local healthcare system, rather than acting as an impartial referee, seems to serve as a gatekeeper for the city's polished image. When a worker dies, the bus carrying him no longer heads to the construction site, but to the airport. Simple wooden coffins are sent back home with vague medical notes. For families in India or Nepal, this is a double tragedy. Not only do they lose their main provider, but they are also denied insurance benefits because the death is classified as natural rather than a workplace accident. Isn't it strange that a system capable of building wonders like the Burj Khalifa cannot provide proper compensation to those who laid each brick for it? Saving millions of dollars in compensation by distorting medical records appears to be an integral part of the optimized business model here. Dubai does not just sell real estate, it sells a dream. And in that dream, there is no place for statistics about those who never make it back home. Tight control of this data seems to be a calculated communication strategy to maintain confidence among international investors and tourists enjoying luxury resorts. International humanitarian organizations may speak out, but calls for data transparency are often met with silence or paper-only reform reports. Dubai has built a system in which profit consistently outweighs the value of human life. If you believe in the power of labor organizations or unions like those in the United States, where workers have the right to be heard, then Dubai may feel like another planet. Here, unions are illegal. Any attempt to organize strikes or collective bargaining is labeled as illegal assembly, a direct threat to national security. Without legal representation and without oversight from international non-governmental organizations, NGOs, workers stand completely alone against powerful employers. While the world moves toward transparency, Dubai seems to have chosen to build a legal wall to ensure that the voices of 3 million people at the bottom of society never reach the luxurious meeting rooms at the top of the Burj Khalifa. Perhaps the most effective tool of intimidation is not prison, but deportation. For a worker carrying massive debt from home, deportation means losing everything. When someone dares to speak up for their rights, employers can report them as absconding or troublemaking. Once a deportation order is signed, all complaints about wages or exploitation become meaningless. They are put on a plane and sent back home empty-handed. This may be the most efficient way to purify the workforce, remove anyone who resists, leaving behind a compliant labor force driven by fear. You might be wondering why you rarely see these issues in the news. Well, foreign journalists arriving here are often said to face numerous barriers, from revoked press credentials to the risk of deportation if they linger around labor camps. Instead, Dubai is highly skilled at creating dazzling noise. International golf tournaments, extravagant art exhibitions, and massive social media marketing campaigns all serve one purpose: to distract global attention. People stay busy looking at Guinness World Records achievements, and in doing so, unintentionally forget the faint cries for help being suffocated beneath the foundations of those towering buildings. It is ironic to see a generation of young people from the United States and Europe, influencers with millions of followers flocking to Dubai under lavish invitations. Have you ever wondered who pays for those yacht parties or nights in presidential suites? Dubai seems to have used a massive budget to turn these individuals into ambassadors without conscience. The content they post revolves only around tax-free shopping and luxury experiences. As millions of these glamorous images flood the internet, algorithms from platforms like Google or TikTok unintentionally push the reality of impoverished labor camps to the very bottom of search results. It seems that with just a few lucrative advertising deals, people are willing to ignore humanitarian issues in exchange for a temporary luxurious lifestyle in front of the camera. You may find it strange that major corporations, which loudly promote ESG, environmental, social, and governance, standards in the US, appear quite flexible when they arrive in the Gulf. Retail brands and leading tech companies benefit from a low-cost infrastructure system built on the labor of workers stripped of their rights. Many American companies enforce strict humanitarian standards at home, but when working with subcontractors in Dubai to optimize profit margins, they seem to adopt a see no evil, hear no evil approach. Projects are designed with green and smart standards by international consulting firms, yet their execution relies on the exploitative kafala system that is rarely scrutinized closely. Perhaps profit has become the only metric, replacing ethical values. Why do Western governments often respond only superficially to labor issues here? If you closely follow geopolitics, the answer may not be difficult to find. The United Arab Emirates is not only a major client for corporations, but also a strategic partner in energy and investment. In a volatile world, trade and security agreements are often weighed more heavily than human rights concerns. Even labor-exporting countries like India or Philippines rarely speak out strongly, perhaps fearing the loss of massive remittance inflows sent home each year. This diplomatic imbalance leaves the cries for help from anonymous workers lost amid calculated handshakes. The tactic of sports washing, hosting international golf and tennis tournaments or global summits, is a perfect way to polish a nation's progressive image. Dubai likely could not sustain this system of exploitation without the complicity, whether intentional or not, of consumer indifference and corporate greed. Perhaps behind every glowing sunset photo over the Persian Gulf are stories never told, and perhaps they are stories people do not want you to hear. Perhaps next time a short travel video about Dubai appears on your screen with golden light and a skyline that seems almost unreal. You should ask yourself one thing. Who built all of that? Who is crammed with 12 others in a small room tonight so that this magnificent view can exist? Will knowing this truth change how you spend your hard-earned money? Or will we simply keep scrolling because it is easier than facing reality? Share your honest thoughts in the comments, because this is a conversation the world has avoided for far too long. Note: this isn't some crystal ball attempt to predict the exact date of a global meltdown. Think of it instead as a much-needed reality check on the systemic geopolitical risks that those glossy investment brochures conveniently choose to ignore. If this breakdown has changed how you look at the supposedly world of luxury, or if you've begun to see the inherent fragility in these high-growth desert models, then we've done our job. Thanks for watching till the end, and we'll catch you in the next video.